Here.
Counselor M. Teresa Santos.
Here.
Counselor Dennis V. Tarano. Counselor Barbara A. Von Villis. We have a quorum, Mr. President.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand and join us in the pledge of allegiance to our flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Just as an FYI, at 9 o'clock tonight, we're going to be stopping the regular docket because we're going to be going into the executive session at 9 o'clock. We've had a buildup of executive session items that need to be addressed tonight. And with the new change in the time for the council meeting being over at 10:30, we're going to be going into executive session at 9 o'clock. So I just wanted to know, as we're going down the agenda, there's some of you that want to speak on different items. If we're not getting there quick enough, you may want to pace yourself a little bit. You may want to say, we'll come back next time. What we don't do and finish tonight, it'll be put on the next docket again. Okay? Item number 1. Pursuant to Rule 25 of the Rules of the Council, citizens may address the town on one subject only. Said subject to substantive town business neither discussed during the regular meeting nor related to personnel or job performance. Citizens may speak for no longer than 5 minutes and must submit a public participation form to the council clerk prior to the start of the meeting. All items discussed during this session will not be voted upon. And we have 2 forms. Is there anybody else that forgot to put a form in? No? Okay. Mr. Frank, Lawrence Frank. Name and address, Lawrence.
Lawrence Frank, 8 O'Donnell Road, Middletown, Rhode Island. You're being distributed a sheet that I will refer to in this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Last month, the zoning board approved the construction of a gas station on West Main Road. In the 1-mile stretch from Maple Avenue to Forest Avenue, there will now be 5 gas stations. The new gas station will be located less than 200 yards from the Shell station at Forest Avenue. And just to put things in perspective, in Warwick, the sheet of paper that I've just distributed to you, along Route 2, from the end of South County Trail, the location of the Showcase Cinemas, to the Rhode Island Mall, a distance of 5 miles of crowded traffic, there are now 6 gas stations, only 1 more that will occupy that 1 mile in Middletown. In what way does this project, this gas station, benefit Middletown? In what ways does this gas station promote the comprehensive plan? In what way, in light of climate change, does this project benefit anyone, not just in Middletown, but anywhere in the state? A short history. Last year, over the objections of the planning board, the zoning board approved a gas station at the corner of Aquidneck and East Main Road. Addressing this town council, after that approval, one member of the zoning board said, quote, "I am very pro-development. I don't know all the iterations of that project, but what I do know, they're taking a site, God knows what goes on in that motel, and you've got people with some money that are coming in trying to run a reputable business. They obviously see need for another gas station, or they wouldn't be putting their money towards that," end of quote. This, unfortunately, is what passes as thoughtful consideration from the zoning board. The idea that what is in best interest of a business is necessarily in the best interest of the town is nonsense. Members of this town have talked at length about the importance of the quality of life in Middletown. Over the years, the zoning board has taken a wrecking ball to the social fabric of this town. When will it stop? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Franklin.
Thank you.
Teresa Spangler? Teresa?
Teresa Spangler, 1111 Wapping Road. I know I put on there Coyotes, but I have one quick question. Are you going to discuss 16A, or are you just going to receive on the agenda item tonight?
We're going to receive 16A tonight.
Okay.
I've asked Mr. Brown to have the person that did the study come down, and he's due to come down April 20th.
That's,
April 20th. He'll be here at the council meeting April 20th.
Okay.
To be able to field any questions.
Thank you. I just want to know if I'm going to stay for that agenda item. The other question, I just want to thank you all for receiving my emails in regards to the National Grid tanks down there. I appreciate that. And I did get, the next day, I did receive a letter without the information about the March meeting, but I did receive a letter just talking about that. It was very, very plain and basic, and I forgot to bring it with me today, but the next day I did receive something. I want to let you know that. But I'm really here tonight to talk about coyotes. I know coyotes live in the wild, and we have to respect their nature. What's happening is, as the town is developing and we're taking away a lot of the habitat, the coyotes are coming out of the woods and moving closer and closer to residential areas. Unfortunately, they are the top of the food chain. There are no other animals on this island that can take them out. They're multiplying by the tons. They are now coming out at 10 o'clock in the morning, 8:30 in the morning, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, closer and closer and closer. So that some residents in areas, we're trapped in our own yards. We can't even take our pets out, can't let our children play outside without being in a 6+ foot. A coyote can jump over 10 feet, up to 10 feet or more sometimes. So I don't know what the town has for ideas about this, but it's becoming a real public safety issue for me and my business. They are lurking through my school parking lot at 8:30 in the morning, 10:30 in the morning, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It's now 2 sightings a week that I'm having. And I know I'm not a public school, but I am a taxpayer, and I do have a, quote, public facility in the sense that I service the public. So I don't know if I can get some help, some guidance. I've called the police, this was a while back, and I just don't know what the town has, what's legal, what can we do? Is there somebody to contact? What is the town going to allow? Things like that.
What you need to do is, sincerely, when you sightings or even making a complaint like this, call the police station right away. Because I believe, Mr. Brown, correct me if I'm wrong, we still have somebody on retainer, don't we?
We have an entire protocol that we follow,
Right.
which includes if there's a threat that the town will
A
assist in
sighting, a
removing.
threat, we have a,
I've called the police before, and they've been very helpful. But I just want to share with the town that I feel as new development is happening, the coyotes are coming out of the woods because they're losing their habitat. And other animals too, but the coyotes, like I said, being top of the food chain, there's nothing to take them out, and they're multiplying, so it's kind of scary.
I can condone what you're saying. I'm where I live. I recently saw 2 of them walking down the middle of the road at night,
Well, at night is bad enough, but I'm very concerned that we're waiting for an accident to happen, and God forbid a child gets attacked, would
No,
be
we agree.
a disaster. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. President? Just
Councilor Flynn.
a quick comment of information. I believe that the Aquidneck Island Planning Commission had or is having a forum on coyotes.
They had it.
So you might follow through with them and see what came out of that forum. Aquidneck Island Planning Commission.
Teresa, I have some handouts that they gave out. Touch base with me and I'll get it to you.
Okay, item number 2. These are items that will continue from the regular meeting on February the 3rd, 2020. Memorandum of the Finance Director through the Town Administrator with enclosures, FY 2020 budget adjustments as of December 31st, 2019.
Motion to receive said memorandum.
Second.
A motion and a second to receive, all in favor?
Aye.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the council. Tonight you have budget adjustments as of December 31st, 2019 for the general fund. There are 4 budget adjustments that we are requesting. We have a federal grant for high-intensity drug trafficking. That's done by the public safety. We have the charging station grants that was approved. It's a state grant. We also have the senior center van purchase, which we want to include in the budget. And we also have the town hall copper installation project. All 4 budget adjustments will increase the budget $268,359 for a total general fund budget of $31,534,449 for a total consolidated budget for town and school of $74,863,835. I ask for your approval of these adjustments.
Any questions from the councils? Hearing none. Item number 3, resolution of the council, FY 2020 general fund budget adjustments.
Motion to pass said resolution.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to pass. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Mark. Item number 4, communication of a county manager quarterly tax collectors report as of 12/31/2019, Town of Middletown.
Motion to receive said communication and report.
Second.
Motion second to receive. All in favor?
Aye.
The tax collector's report is for the first 6 months of the year, so it's due December 31st, 2019. The town maintains a strong collection rate at almost 53%, which is in the first group of the numbers, which is the current year. The second group of numbers compares it to the prior year, so we had a 52.5% collection rate, so it's a half percentage more, so we're very consistent. Then on the third set of numbers, it compares it to the 2018 fiscal year, which was almost 56%, which is higher than we are doing right now, and that is because of the tax law that was changed. So people came in to pay their taxes by the December 31st date. At the bottom of the page, we have the prior year collections, where it shows that as of July 1st, 2019, we had $1,276,000 to be collected, and to date, for the 6 months, we've collected 49% for the general fund. And after that is for the sewer fund, you had $87,000,000 uncollected, which we've collected 92% of those, leaving a balance of $7,300. Any questions?
Any questions? Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 5. Amendment to the rules of the council, adding all town council meetings shall adjourn by 10:30 PM.
Okay. Motion to add all town council meetings shall adjourn by 10:30 PM, and also motion to remove council rule number 34, which is written interview questions will be used for the planning board and zoning boards, which will be sent out and completed by the applicant prior to the interview.
Second.
A motion is second. Any conversation?
Yes,
Yep.
please.
Council Santos.
Mr. President, I believe we talked about adding another form, another sentence to above number 7 on this, where election of the president, he or she shall call for the election of the council, by the council of the vice president. I think it should be added that the president is not necessarily voted in as the highest vote getter. The president is picked by the other councilors, similar to the vice president. I don't know if I'm making myself clear on that.
I think you are.
Yep, very clear.
So that should be added in, that the president is also elected by the councilors.
And the council's vice president.
Yes.
Okay. Any conversation?
Does that make sense, Mr. Brown? No?
I think it's just more of a perception for
The public.
the public, because a lot of the public think because someone's the top vote getter, they're the president. And that's not the way it works, nor should it work that way. Because just because you're the top vote getter doesn't always mean that you're the best person or the right person for the job, or you're able to run a meeting efficiently. So, you know, I've been on a lot of ends of that, and, you know, I think it's the right thing.
Okay, so can we amend your motion and add that to it? And we can do it right now? Mr. Solicitor?
Amend the motion.
Well, we're gonna amend the motion. We're gonna add that, what Council Santos brought up to it.
Okay, so the
Can we do that?
or do you want to withdraw your motion?
Well, I'm just talking about, if we're talking about adding things, I'd like something to add as well, as long as it's
Okay.
to the, you know, council see fit.
Is there a public notification requirement we need to be aware of?
Well, that's what I'm asking.
No, no. Why don't you finish that first motion and then make a second motion with...
Wendy's back.
Okay, let's move it along.
No, no.
All right, so we have the motion,
Finish this
and it's
first
been
motion.
seconded.
Yeah,
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now we have another motion.
okay.
I'd like to make a motion that the president is also elected by the councilors who've been elected. Does that make sense?
Yes, as well as the vice president.
As well as the vice president. Thank
Just
you, Mr.
checking
President.
the charter to make sure there's nothing that conflicts.
Well, the charter provides that the council shall elect one of its members as president. So that's, so the charter provides that the council will elect one of its members as president, so.
So is it redundant to put it in the
Yes.
rules of the
Yes, it
council,
is.
is what I'm
It is.
hearing?
Yes, it would be.
Okay, I make a
Yeah.
motion to withdraw my motion. It's already there.
But you could add the vice chair part of it, because there is no provision in the charter about the vice chair.
It's already here, it's already
It's
number
on.
7.
Okay.
Okay, so no need.
Right.
Okay. Vice President, you got something?
Yeah, I do. I mean, at the last meeting, at the public forum, one of the residents, Tom Welch, brought it up actually, and I wasn't aware of it, and I talked to you about it a little bit this past week, I was surprised to find out that people could call in and put things on public forum. And it just struck me as odd. I just didn't think, I don't know how you feel about that. You don't think it's odd?
No, I don't think it should happen.
I don't think it should happen. I didn't know it was happening until
It's been happening for a long time.
he brought it up, and I'm like, it kind of, I don't know how the rest of you felt, but I just feel that if you want to speak in public forum, you should have to be here and fill out that form.
I agree.
I don't have a problem with that.
Did you get that motion?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
Also, in regards to public forum, I don't know if we want to consider this at the same time. We're talking about the public forum. We have one of the lengthiest public forums, 5 minutes. That's lengthy compared to other cities and towns. I mean, realistically, if we're going to have a 15-minute public forum, which everybody, that seems to be the standard across the state, maybe we should do what most people do, have a 3-minute, each person has 3 minutes to talk. That way you could get in 5 people, instead of just 3 people. Go ahead. You're biting at the mic, go ahead.
I'm opposed to limiting public forum at all. I think also listening to some of the statistics that came out from Mr. Welch, where I think our average was 1 point something persons as a general rule, which is not even close to even at a full 5 minutes per person. That's not your 15 minutes. And if people are willing and have something to speak about and they're willing to come out, I think they should be heard. I think that should be the priority.
Okay. Council Lombardi.
So I've seen other councils, and you go from one extreme to another. You have one council to one side of us that the public forum and the people that get up to that podium run the meetings, and then you go to another side of us on the other side who at times won't even let you talk if you're not a resident of that town. I think we're pretty generous about the time we give our residents to talk. I'm not in favor of really reducing it to 5 minutes, but Bob's suggestion about 3 minutes and getting more people in makes some sense. But, you know, quite frankly, I think we're pretty generous about how we do things. I don't like the fact that they can call in on the phone. I question, though, Paul, we're talking about rules of the council when we're talking about, you know, this particular agenda item. And is the public forum piece of it a rule of the council? Or should we address
There
this
is a
separately?
rule,
25.
it does say that citizens shall complete a written request to speak, noting the subject to be addressed, and submit that form to the council clerk prior to the start of the meeting.
So if it's a rule of the council, then is it appropriate to talk about it under this and do it now? To change it, if we want to change it, if this is...
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Okay.
That's
Yeah,
why we're talking
the rules are under
Perfect.
consideration, yes.
Perfect.
That's
Okay,
all we're talking about.
thank you.
Council Von Bills.
I like the 5-minute deadline, and I like the 15-minute brackets. But at the same time, sometimes, as you did at the last meeting, you extended it because there were so many people. I think that should be at the discretion of the president, not build in this extra time. That's my,
We've only done it twice, to my knowledge, the years that I've sat up here. The both times was,
no, I think
Recently.
what we do works pretty well, and like I said, at the last meeting, you did extend it, and that was good. But I think at the same time, if you're gonna spend hours, which could happen if people are upset enough, I don't think that's appropriate either.
yeah, it almost turns into a filibuster.
Yeah, no.
Any other conversation?
Yes, Mr. President.
Council Santos.
Can I go back to my original
Yes.
question and address our town solicitor?
Yes, ma'am.
If the rules and regulations of the council are in the charter, why can't that segment of appointing the president be under the rules here too?
Well, the rules and regulations of the council aren't in the charter. There is a section of the charter dealing with the council, how you're elected, your power, your authority, your duties, et cetera. That says that the council president is elected by the members of the council. So
Okay, I'm with you there.
you can adopt rules and regulations for the council yourselves, so long as they don't conflict with what the charter says. So you can't say top vote getter becomes council president, because that means the council is not voting for the president, which is what the charter requires.
So it doesn't conflict, so technically Councilor Santos could make the motion, and we could adopt it.
Make a motion to say that it's redundant, you
It's
don't
in
have to.
line with it, it's redundant.
Yes.
But it also brings in the vice president as well.
Yes.
So,
Okay.
so
Who's my voice?
we'll make
Who wanna
that,
say it?
we'll make that motion.
Okay, motion to add to the town council rules that the council president is elected by the majority of the peers, not necessarily being the top vote getter, and the vice president is elected by the members of the council as well,
Second.
pursuant to the charter.
Good. Second.
Okay, any further conversation?
Thank
No.
you.
Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now, going back to,
Oh, okay. Okay, so motion to amend the rules of the council so that the public forum section, you have to be present to fill out the form to be able to speak. You cannot call in to have your name filled out by who's ever filling it out.
Can you email? That's just a question I'm gonna have based on what's written here.
I don't think, what's the difference if you call or email? You should be here, because people show up. You know, their time is valuable too, and so.
Well, not only that, by email or by telephone, who's to say who it is?
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah.
I'm just trying to clarify, just so.
no, and I can appreciate that, but for years, we've had walk-ins. I don't know how many walk-ins we get, walk in and do that, or call-ins. It's been a common practice for years. I don't have a problem with making the people come here and filling out the form. I don't have a problem with that. But it's been something, it wasn't unique to one time. It's been a common practice for a while, for years.
Okay.
Can I ask one question? I just want to make sure that we're not going to accept them until right before the meeting. So they can't come in earlier that day and hand them in, right before the meeting. So that's what you'll put in your motion, right prior to the meeting.
Right before the meeting.
Perfect.
Mr. Brown?
Just a question for you. We've had a conversation, you've asked me questions about giving priority to town residents. I'm not sure if that's something,
Yeah, that's another thing. I'm gonna throw this out there. There are cities and towns, in fact, a neighboring town, Newport, you can't even talk at a public forum unless you're a resident of the city of Newport. You're not entitled to talk there. I think that's not a totally bad idea, but I think a resident should have priority. If people come in and there's a handful of people, and we know we're not gonna get to everybody, I think if you are a resident of the town, you should have priority over non-resident town. That's just how I feel.
I agree with you.
If there's time, then we'll let everybody talk. But if there's not time, I think a resident should have the priority over.
I'd have to think about that a little bit, just because.
Well, you take your time and think about it.
I mean, sleep on it, think about it, because, you know, our Aquidneck Island towns have common problems. Let's take coyotes, for example. Well, if somebody comes and they're from someplace else and they're an expert on coyotes, we need to hear from them. I think that.
Things like that can be a docket item. You know, we're allowing the public forum to be taken out of context a little bit. Public forum is for people to come in and make a statement, make a suggestion that can be followed up later on. Maybe somebody says, wow, that's a great idea. And, you know, we'll look into that. We'll follow up on that. Not to come in and be an integral part of the meeting, because the meeting has an established agenda.
Correct.
Mr. President, just one suggestion, in speaking with the clerk, about submitting forms right before the meeting.
Yeah,
Since
when
I
is
don't know
right
what the
before the
legal
meeting? Tell me
definition
about
of
that.
right before is, my suggestion is to say that they may be submitted, you know, no earlier than 30 minutes before the meeting.
Half hour
That way we
before
have,
the-
yeah,
half
that
hour
way we
before
have
the-
a
That's fine, but it's in person.
in person,
Yeah.
Okay.
yes.
Good, okay. All right,
No,
so we have those motions. Did we get Council Santos's motion all taken care of?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay? You want to make the motion on these other ones, Paul?
Already made it.
You made it.
And the half hour before, no sooner
Yes,
than
Oh.
half
we
hour?
changed
In
the
person.
prior to a half hour.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
all right. So we have any further conversation? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, consent calendar.
Do I need a motion to amend to adopt the
Yes, you
amendments?
do.
Yes.
Okay, motion to adopt said amendments to the rules of the council as amended.
Motion second to adopt, any further conversation? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, consent calendar,
Okay, motion to approve this consent calendar minus item number 7.
Second?
motion second to approve, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Item number 7, approval of the minutes, regular meeting, February 3rd, 2020.
Motion to approve said minutes.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Counselor
Oh.
Flynn?
Thank you. So this is just a clarification. The minutes that have been submitted with item number 40, which is under boards and committees, it references item number 36. And item number 36 is applicant specific, so currently the minutes for item number 40 don't make sense. I'd like to make a motion to amend the minutes under item number 36 to add, quote, "As I have stated before, when there are more applicants than positions for appointing volunteers, my philosophy is to support the qualified new applicants," unquote. And adding this will just make the minutes for number 40 make sense.
Okay, any conversation? Is there a second?
So, are you changing what you said?
No. If you read the minutes, number 40 references
I read it. I
number
see it.
36, but number 36, as the minutes are written, because I made a statement under number 36, and then I made additional statements. The additional statements were item number 36 specific, but number 40 references the other statements that I made prior to the applicant-specific statements. So if you read 40, it's going to reference 36. It's going to be about the number 36 applicant. It has nothing to do with number 40.
That makes sense, to me.
Okay,
Okay, I'll second it.
It's clarification.
Yeah,
okay.
okay, we have a motion, it's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you, Counselor Flynn.
Thank you.
Item number 11, ordinance. Memorandum of the Town Solicitor, mobile food establishment ordinance.
Motion to receive said memorandum.
Second?
Motion second receive, all in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Solicitor?
This is an item that was discussed briefly at the last meeting, and this is a proposed ordinance with the intent to bring the town into compliance with state law, which established the State Mobile Food Establishment Registration Act, which provides that rather than mobile food trucks being licensed by town in each city and town in which they operate, there's a statewide registration through the Department of Business Regulations, and then municipalities have the right to then regulate the number of mobile food establishments that can operate within town, where they can operate, hours of operation, and noise. So this is basically a rewrite of our existing mobile food service ordinance. I've given you a memo that has the highlights of it. Essentially, would limit the number of permits, annual permits for operations that can operate on a day-to-day basis in town to 6 food trucks and 6 carts, would restrict operation to the office, business, office park, and light industrial zones, with the proviso that they cannot be operated within 750 feet of an existing restaurant. Hours of operation from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. It also would allow the town to issue event permits. There are two types, one for a large event of over 500 people, say an event at Second Beach, at which food trucks would be invited. Also allows residents, if they're having a private event, let's say at their home, and they want to arrange for a food truck to cater that event, allow them to get an event permit through the clerk's office, and then those mobile food trucks that are operating at those one-off events have the ability to come in and get an event permit, allowing them to operate on that one occasion. The fees are essentially in line with what is allowed per state law. And any questions you have, I'm happy to try to answer.
The state law, they have their fee.
Yes.
Now, our permit fee is,
The permit fee that's allowable under the new state law for an annual mobile food truck license is $75.
and what are we currently getting?
50.
50.
I think the price of food trucks just went up.
Didn't the number of licenses also go down?
It did.
The number of licenses proposed here is less, which is based on the comments from the council at the last meeting. The council has the ability to set that number. What we tried to do, and this was based, frankly, on what Newport did in their ordinance, was we separated it between trucks and carts, and they allowed 6 of each. So, at least for the purposes of this draft, that's what we went with on this.
Mr. President.
Council Lombardi.
Peter, I got 2 questions for you.
Yep.
First of all, quick comment. I think, you modeled it after Newport's, and I think rightfully so, based on some of the concerns we've heard. This is a little more restrictive as far as how close they can be to an existing restaurant, correct? We're making it more restrictive.
In terms of the number of the areas in which they can operate,
Right.
that's a fair statement. And once again, unless it's an event, for example, they're not allowed to operate in residential zones, but if you get permission to hold an event at your house and you want to have a food truck come in and cater that event, you can get a permit for that.
Next, is how close they can be to an existing restaurant. So
Yeah, I think
we-
Newport, I think, is 500 feet, ours is 7, what's proposed here is
We're a little
750.
further. All right, so the other thing is, as we reduce the number of licenses, what about a person who comes in for a license who has more than one truck? Do they have to get does that stop them from, we have,
If you get a license, you can operate one truck or one cart under that license. If you have multiple trucks, you cannot operate multiple vehicles under that one license.
that
It's
do?
one license per vehicle.
what does that do to somebody like, I'll use a specific instance, to Dell's? What does that do? He's got multiple trucks.
I don't know if they all operate in Middletown at the same time, so that's a question.
So technically, they couldn't operate all of them. He's got more than 6 trucks. I'm just saying that that's the case.
The way it's currently drafted, one license allows you to operate one truck.
Okay.
If you were going to operate more than one truck at a time in town, you would need more than one license.
All right, now my last question is, so we have the concession.
Because I think your town wants to have some control. If one license allowed you to operate as many vehicles as you cared to buy or to rent, that would eliminate control on the part of the town.
All right, and my last question is, when the concession down at the beach comes up, which is in another year or 2, I think, how does that affect a person who's bidding, who has trucks down in the beach lot? If he doesn't have a license, does he, if he doesn't come under this 6 licenses, can he bid?
There's two things, you would certainly be able to bid. You wouldn't want to restrict the bidding, because I don't think, from the
But he's gonna have to get a
financial,
license.
financial impact, you wouldn't have a successful bid if you're only limiting it to the people that already have a license. You could either do one of 2 things. You can increase at that time, you can increase the number of licenses available. You can raise the cap to allow that, or we can have a provision make some provision in the ordinance that, you know, the concessionaires at the beach, I can come up with some language between now and the second reading that we might be able to include to make sure that successful
So
bidders
it'll be at
aren't.
the discretion of the council at that particular time?
Correct.
To do that?
Yeah.
All right.
Council Flynn.
So I had a couple of questions, just to clarify, there's no limit on the trucks that can get licenses for events. Did I read that right?
Well, but you are licensing an event, so if someone comes to the council and says, I'm going to put on a big event, you are licensing the overall event, and as part of that, you would set a limit on a number of things, including how many trucks would be attending. So for example, the perfect example is an event at the beach in which you're
Like family
allowing
night.
a family night, yeah. But you'd set the parameters on how many trucks would be allowed.
The organizer would or the town would?
The town, because the council issues the permit for that event.
But it does say on section 113.04, there's no limit on the number of temporary mass gathering permits or mobile food establishments.
Well, it means there's no limit on the number of events. In other words, we're not capping the number of events. But within
Still
that
ambiguous.
permit, if someone comes to the council and says, I'm going to hold an event at such and such location, and I'm going to invite 20 mobile food trucks, you have the right to say that's too many. We're only going to permit the event if you reduce it to 5 or 6 or whatever the council thinks is appropriate.
Okay, it's a little ambiguous.
I'll take a look at that. What section were you referring to?
113.04.
Okay, I'll take a look at it.
And on the Dells situation, I'm not sure if, because of the additional restrictions, if the summer season could be called an event. You know, I think we need to accommodate and make sure that, because right now, if I understand, I got the numbers from the town clerk, we have 14 event licenses out, issued, and that would make 3 are year-round, correct?
No, that's,
Did I switch those?
Of the total number of trucks that we have, or carts, 14 of those people from last licensing year were, their specific purpose was for events. It wasn't
For events.
14 events, it's that they were licensed.
Right,
for
14 licenses were event licenses, right?
peddlers back then.
Right.
That's why they obtained the license, was for events.
Correct, so it only left 3. And so what we're saying is Dells is one of the 3, but they have multiple trucks, and that's where there's an issue?
You know, I really have a problem with somebody that bids on a concession down the beach, and the money that they pay for those concessions, that they'd even have to get a permit to have their truck. at
Well,
that
by
concession.
state law, that truck's got to be registered.
Okay.
So let me come up with some language to deal with that particular situation between now and the next reading. And
You know,
I'll
it just
submit
doesn't
it.
seem right.
No, I agree, and the town, in order to have a successful bid, and frankly, to get the most money possible for the concession, you want to have as many people as possible be able to bid. You don't want to limit it to permit holders, so.
That was my point.
One more thing.
Right.
I just had one other thing. The hours of operation, starting at 11 a.m., you know, I know the base has or had a food truck that was a breakfast truck. So they started at, you know, 6:37 a.m. So you eliminate anyone who might be out there just doing coffee and bagels. And is that the intent, or?
Frankly, those were hours of operation that were in Newport's ordinance, so really, it's sort of a placeholder for you to consider whether you think those hours are appropriate and whether they ought to be
No, I
broader.
think that's a good point, too. Because you know something, there's a lot of guys that are out there hustling construction sites,
Yeah.
hustling businesses early in the morning for them.
Yeah. We could say 8 o'clock, or,
You may want to go earlier than that.
Yes, I would go earlier than that. These guys start, you know, digging holes at 7. So they want
Was-
their coffee at
Yeah.
6 or 6:30.
what would you like me to put in? 7?
7.
I'd say,
They want to get their coffee before they
yeah, I'd
start
say at
work.
least 7 o'clock.
Okay.
Can I point out that 7 to drink their coffee would be late? They're going to start work at 7. I
Then
think
why
the
don't we
ordinance
go,
right
why
now
don't we
is
go
they start
6:30?
at
Why don't
7.
we go
Okay.
6:30?
I go to Dunkin' Donuts before I go to work, so I mean, I don't know. But,
Sure.
Bob, so I don't like the whole idea of mobile food trucks. I like it for events or private events or beach events or whatever it is. I don't like it that we're gonna license trucks that can pull up within 750 feet of a tax-paying business that's paying thousands of dollars in taxes, and this person shows up for 50 bucks. I think we're gonna erode our base of potential, I don't wanna say restaurants, but I just think it's wrong. I think it's wrong that if I owned a business, I'd be furious that the town's allowing mobile trucks for 50 bucks to show up. What incentive are you giving me? I'm okay with events, because a phone call came in after the last meeting and said, thank you for not doing that to our business, but I'm upset that the council approved it.
Well, you do have...
Because we're setting a precedent, there's no turning back from it.
You're not setting a precedent because you have been licensing mobile food operations in town for quite
Yeah,
some
but it's
time.
it's at a different level now, Pete.
Okay.
They're pulling up over here, now that we give them a license, they're doing business before they even got a license, and then they come ask for it, which certainly annoyed me. And they're taking business away from people that are paying, businesses that are paying thousands of dollars in taxes. It's wrong.
Yeah, my position hasn't changed on that. I feel the same way. I just don't think it's right that somebody can drive a truck into town and park within 750 feet of an established business and sell for, say 50, I mean, even 75. I mean, I think it's crazy.
Well, the state law says that the council has the right to limit the number of permits, so it's
Then let's change the
within
fee
your
to about
purview.
$3,000 and see how many show up.
No, we can't do that.
Can't do that.
That we can't, the state law covers that. But what we can do, Pete, we can have as many special event permits as we want to. But we don't have to have X amount of go anytime, drive around town, any place you want of permits.
Well, if
We don't
you're
have to
gonna...
have any of those.
Well, if you certainly would need to have them for the concessions that you're operating on a day-to-day basis down at the beach.
That's an event. Oh, I thought you're talking about the beach nights, or you're talking
No,
about?
I'm talking about the concessions.
Those are bids, right?
I understand that, but they fall under the state law because they're mobile food establishments that are registered and then are required to get a permit in each of the municipalities in which they operate. So, in my opinion, you at least need to be able to issue permits to those concessions.
Mr. President?
I think in that circumstance, perhaps. But I just don't like the idea of saying, you know, we can give a guy a permit that can drive anywhere and park anywhere in town. It just, one minute, I got you. I got you.
Okay,
If I can finish my conversation, I'll let you talk again.
excellent.
I just don't think it's right that we afford somebody an opportunity to take business away from an established business in the town of Middletown. I just don't see it as being right. I don't see it being fair to that established business, and it certainly isn't a sign that we're business-friendly to the people in the town of Middletown. Council Lombardi.
So if you look at the highlights of the draft, the second bullet, it says it's limited to office business, office park, and light industrial zoning districts. If you look at a map of those districts, it's really restrictive, and it's very few places in town where they can go. This is not about pulling up in somebody's parking lot 750 feet away from their front door and allowing them to compete with them, number one. But number two, you know, I said this the other night when we were talking about businesses in general in this state. We are not business-friendly in this state. We do everything we can possibly can to restrict and put fees and put restrictions and decrease revenue, and we're ranked 50th in the country. about being business-friendly in general, not just small business-friendly. And I have a problem with limiting competition. Competition ultimately makes businesses better. It makes them, you know, step up to the plate and make their businesses better. And quite frankly, what these food trucks sell, look, if I want to go out and have fine dining someplace or go out to lunch at a pub, I'm not going to look for a food truck. I'm going to go to a local establishment, and we all frequent all of them at one time or another. It's about what you want on that particular day. So, I mean, at the end of the day, I probably got the same call you did, Paul, and I got an earful from that guy. All right? But the bottom line was, you know, when I said to him, so I'll tell you, he said to me, well, I got places all around me that are empty. They used to be chain restaurants. Those chain restaurants are not coming back. What this town needs to do is figure out a way to help those people repurpose those buildings so that they become viable parts of this community again. The chain restaurants are going the way of the big box stores because they all can't compete with each other. And you know, at the end of the day, what it sounded like to me, this guy didn't want any competition at all. And I told him that. I mean, what's wrong with a little bit of competition? What's wrong with encouraging new businesses to come into our town? Whether they be a food truck or whether they be an office business or something like that. I mean, we need to be a little bit more open-minded. We're too parochial around here sometimes.
Councilor Flynn.
I would just say I agree with Councilor Lombardi, and, you know, these are small businesses, and Councilor Von Villa said it at the last meeting, this is a service to the people using those food trucks. The market is totally different from a restaurant market. You're getting guys or gals who might be sweaty and dirty from work. They just need some food and they need to grab it, or they only have, you know, 15 minutes. They don't have enough time to go in, sit down, wait for the waitress, be serviced. Totally different markets. And I think that, you know, food trucks should be embraced. You know, that's an up-and-coming family activity now, food truck festivals. I think Middletown should be looking at that maybe for their off-season. I think that this is something that, you know, is not a threat. I think this is a good growth of our economy.
Okay, any further conversation? Okay. Item number 12 is the motion for the amendment, correct, Peter?
Is the, item number 12 is just the first reading of the order?
Okay, item number 12, an ordinance and amendment to the town code, this is the first reading. An ordinance and amendment to Title 9 Business Regulations, Chapter 113, Food Service, see attached ordinance.
Motion to receive said ordinance in its first reading.
Second.
A motion and second to receive. All in favor?
Mr. President,
Councilor Lombardi.
I thought the solicitor was going to go back and make some changes based on some of the discussions we just had. Why would we vote on the first reading now if he's going to come back to us with an amended ordinance?
Okay.
It's at the council's discretion, but those changes I can get them to you before the next reading. You can review them and discuss them at the next meeting.
But if you change it, it's subject to 2 more readings. You can't just...
Yes, you
Yeah,
can.
amend
We
it.
can change, you can amend it at the next meeting.
All right.
Yeah. But if you don't receive it on first reading, then it guarantees 2 more
It's gonna go
hearings.
down. Okay. All right.
All right, any other questions? All right. So the motion's been seconded to receive said ordinance on its first reading. All in favor signify by raising your hand.
In favor, right?
In favor.
In favor, raise your hand.
For receiving it for the first reading.
To receive, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Opposed? Aye. What do you have, Madam Clerk?
I didn't get Teresa's vote.
What's your vote?
We're only receiving it on the first reading, right? We're not
Yes.
No,
opposing
we're
it.
making a motion to receive it. If we don't receive it, then it goes back to the drawing board again.
Oh, I oppose it.
Okay. All right, so 3-3, motion fails, correct?
Correct.
So we'll go back and rewrite the thing. Solicitor? Go back, rewrite it,
Yes, sir.
we'll bring it back again.
Absolutely.
And then we'll have, if necessary, we'll have some public input then, again. Okay, item number 13, other communications. Communication with Linda Liberty, VP, Epcot, Head Start, Early Head Start, East Bay, Community Action Programs, interested in continuing as tenant at the JFK building.
Motion to receive said communication.
Second?
Motion is second to receive. Mr. Brown? Anything on this?
I think Linda's here to
Okay.
talk about her memo.
Go right ahead. Linda?
Yes, good evening. Does everybody have a copy of the letter, Mr. Brown? I brought some extras.
No, everyone has.
Oh,
it.
We
okay.
do.
So I am approaching the town council to request that we continue our residency at the JF Kennedy building. I understand Newport is leaving the building. We've been subletting from Newport, so we would then want to consider working directly with Middletown to continue to be there.
Great.
There's information in the letter. I can go through it, or if you have specific
I'm going to
questions.
open it up to the councilors if they have any questions
Okay,
of you.
thank
I
you.
looked it over. Any councilor have any questions? Okay. Thank you, Linda.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Rivera, she wanted to talk in regards to this?
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the council. Yes, I just wanted to offer my support and urge the council to lease the space at Kennedy to the East Bay Community Action Program, at least until the town has a plan ready to go in the development of the west side. The council discussed over and over again for a length amount of time about renting space to Newport Public Schools, and then they turned around and withdrew, and the town lost that revenue. So I would urge the town to approve it, at least until you have a plan in your hand, ready to go, and then you can say, well, this is the last year.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other conversation? Okay, we have a motion and a second to receive the communication. All in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Brown, you'll
I'll work with Linda and the
work with
solicitor.
Linda and work out the details and bring them back to us.
Yes.
Linda, thank you. Okay, item number 14, memorandum of the town administrator with enclosures RE, change order, Middletown 020-003- athletic fields at the former drive-in.
Motion to receive said memorandum.
Second?
A motion and a second to receive. All in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Hall's here tonight to describe two change orders that we're requesting the council approve related to the drive-in project.
Thank you, Sean. Mr. President, members of the council, this is a proposed change order to the drive-in multipurpose athletic fields. There's two pieces to this change order. The first is for electrical service to be run to the future light locations. There's 3,200 feet of 2-inch conduit that would be terminated in a handhold. Those handholds would be ready for extension and tie into the new lights eventually. We're trying to get this work done before we put down the loam and seed and basically finish grade the fields, minimizing disruption to that part of the project. The second part is the replacement of a field drainage line that runs through the Gaudet School. That line impacts our access into the athletic field, so we're proposing to repair that line at the same time. And that's basically it.
Thank you, Warren.
Two questions, if I may.
Council Santos.
Mr. Hall, with these courts being built, is there still land left that something else could be built?
There is some space that's available for other activities. I'll say yes. To the north of the fields, there's probably, I don't know, maybe 30,000 square feet.
Okay, could 2 pickleball courts be built there instead of Linden?
Space-wise, I would say yes, there's available space there.
Is it too late to think about this instead of uprooting the Linden Park?
No, I don't think it is. We could talk about that. Some of the issues on the north side of those fields is that is in the end of the activities, and if balls are thrown, balls are kicked, then that north end of the field is where the scoreboards, the restrooms, and the concession area are going to be located. So we may have to take a closer look at pickleball activities out there.
We're setting up lights, which we're gonna have to set up at Linden Park. We're gonna have lights at the movie park, right? Why not incorporate everything together?
Mm-hmm.
It's one park and they've got everything.
So I think one of the things that we looked at, so Warren actually does have a plan that's been prepared with pickleball courts on the north side, but they are a distance away from the parking. One of the things that we talked about with pickleball is that it is an activity that's enjoyed by people that are not 18, but I guess, you know, my age and older. So being closer to parking seems to be something that would go along with the pickleball, as opposed to locating it essentially at the far end of all the fields. So that was, I think, basically the extent of our discussion when we looked at that. And then, as Warren said, we're already concentrating the concession stand, the restrooms. The school department has started activities fixing the dugouts and the broadcasting booth. You already have a hive of activity that's in that location before we introduce another sport per se.
We're already spending money at the drive-in.
Correct.
Now we're gonna turn around and spend money at Linden Park.
We're introducing a new activity, correct.
Why can't it all be done? It's gonna have lights, it's gonna have a bathroom facility.
Well, you're not going to have lights. I mean, if you're going to build a pickleball court, you're going to have another set of lights. I don't think we've talked about having lights for
We'll
pickleball.
incorporate everything together.
So I think it's a great idea.
But you don't like it.
I don't like the location of it. That's just me personally, because for the reasons stated. Also, I believe that, I don't know how close it is to that north end, but I believe that baseball field, backstop and stuff's gonna be relocated as well. So, that with the scoreboard there, it's a great idea, great thinking. I just don't think, and as Sean said, the first thing crossed my mind, it's an elderly sport. And that's a long walk for some potential people that may not be able to walk out there that far. I guess you could say if they can play, they can walk, but, I don't know.
That's
Just
a good
trying to
idea.
think.
I'm not disagreeing with you.
Yeah, but it's a great idea.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I tried,
Maybe closer to where that ball field is that nobody uses.
I'm trying to save taxpayers' money.
Is there room on that side, Warren? You know the ball field he's talking about, closer to the cafeteria, you know? Is there room in that corner, over in that area, or no?
That's how we left the conversation, that's what we're exploring, is using that corner by the cafeteria, and then people can park right there
Perfect.
and get right onto the area. And then looking at a recommendation that Councilor Rodrick had when we had our last not open space, but recreation fields, is looking at what's necessary to improve that Pop Warner practice field area, whether that's lighting or some other improvements to make that a surface, a better, an activity area as opposed to sort of a pickup area. So
Yeah.
trying to tie that last piece in to the space that we already have, so.
Okay. We have a resident that wants to weigh in on this too. Judith Kelly? Judith? Come on up.
Judith Kelly, 29 Wyatt Road. Of course, everybody's talking about the lights, and I'm here because I'm opposed to the lights. And I think use of the drive-in is a good use for that land. for the different kinds of fields. However, I still have some concerns for the lighting. I'm going to go back to the minutes of November 6, 2017. A comment was made that there would be no lights there. Then Sean Brown added that there would be 3 LED lights by the restrooms. Then by September 16th of 2019, we're adding the solar lights. We have 6 lights, I think, that are going under where the fields are. But now I see a pickleball suggestion, and the pathway lights, the bathroom lights, I think it's multiplying again. And the objection is that when we've been in this position of opposing the lights because of our experience with the middle school, that middle school, we came here because the lights were on 24 hours. They've been on till 11 o'clock. There's no one out there. It's an empty field. Now, the last couple of days, they've been off at 8 o'clock, which is, I think, more appropriate. Also, if you're going to have games, have the lights on, shut the lights off. There should be somebody in charge of doing that. The lights could go off. There could be safety lights, like the lights near the bathroom left on, that type of thing. I don't think you need the whole complex lit up all night. The other thing that we've had, I think they need rules for use. We've had practices with cheering at 5:30 in the morning. I think it was a lacrosse team from Solvay, you know, they had a chant, warm-up chant. We don't need it. Contractors can't start till 7. You wouldn't let a restaurant have bands playing, they have music playing. Practices can be quiet, I think. So I think that we've been trying to get some relief, and now that we have the 2 complexes, I think that, you know, we need to, the lights are going in, we know that. But I think we need to have some opportunity to work with the town to resolve some of the issues that we've had ever since the middle school was built. And it's just being expanded.
Mr. President?
Judith, very good points. Excellent points.
Mr. President?
Councilor Santos.
Ms. Kelly, my proposal of the pickleball was turned down, so.
Well, no, but I mean, okay, but we come here tonight, you know,
I know.
we came here like 8 or 10 years ago complaining about the 24-hour lights. We're back again because we're going to be in that same position. We're surrounded. And
Mr.
there's
Brown.
no recourse. I
Mr.
think
Brown,
that's
have
the
we
problem.
Have we adjusted those and put those on timers now?
The light is on a timer, but it's probably overridden by a computer
I think
control
it's only-
also. So I'll find out from Mr. Fonts how they're
I think the
managing
new
it.
time has been on only about 5 or 6 days, that it's down to 8 o'clock.
Okay.
It's kind of been fluctuating. And there was a practice going on when I left, so they did have the lights on. But
I'll
that's-
find out
that's
and
acceptable, 'cause
report
they're
back.
using it.
And I think Mr. Hall has a meeting with Mrs. Kelly, so.
I'd like to know if somebody overrides it over there, is there a time limit on the override?
That's my understanding, but I think what happens is if
If there
someone,
isn't, there should be.
I think if someone schedules it and then someone doesn't show up, then the lights just stay on all night until some specific
Yeah,
time.
there's no need for that.
I'll get the details.
The other thing was, I called Solvay, and I didn't call the president or anything like that. When Solvay did that, I called the phys ed department there, and I left a message. And then I was told we weren't supposed to call them, we're supposed to call someone else. I think when Solvay uses that field, or if anyone uses that field, they need to know it, that they violated some decency rules, I'll call it
Yeah, I think the
that.
whole thing right now is to make sure that we get the lighting situation, because there's no sense of having lights on late at night, especially when there's nobody there. And if there's an override, there should be a limited override. Vice President.
So, Mrs. Kelly, thank you for coming. I agree with you. I think that the new complex, I agree with the walk-in lights as well, because I know Jack Anthony had been upset about that for years as well.
Our whole street came
Yeah.
years ago, but
Yeah.
we're getting older.
So, but I didn't know that they were showing up there at 5:30 in the morning, and That's,
But I think they had permission to do it
I'm
at that
sure,
time.
but I think we need to take a look at that as well as these new fields when they're done. It's not right that, you know, like she said, we don't allow construction companies and
They
to
could
stop
be
to a
there
certain time.
practicing. I don't think that was the issue. Some of them are there early. It's the chanting.
I know, but how do you stop a chant?
No, I
If
think
we
you
limit
have
the
to have-
time till 7 o'clock in the morning or something like that,
No.
then that's a different story. What time do you wake up? 7:30, we'll put it 7:30, no, I'm just kidding. But I think it's a great point you bring up. I'd be upset too if somebody was out there chanting at 5:30 in the morning.
Who would they get permission from to go out there that early in the morning? Would it
It's-
be the
it-
school department?
It's the school department. So I know it's been a couple years since I've gotten a complaint. Some of the neighbors had contacted me because football season had started and the whistles were going. I was able to meet with the Salve coach and say, look, can we not use the whistle until a certain point of time? And the issue was it was a new coach. I think that may be the issue. It just, again, I think to Mrs. Kelly's standpoint, I think it's just, you need to have a discussion with them to say, look, there's a neighborhood, can we
I think
take
common
some steps to
sense.
get along? Common sense,
Common
exactly.
sense.
So, but we'll address that with Rosemarie and then the Salve people.
Councilor Flynn.
The other thing that we had, a little problem with, some of I think it was the baseball team, their coach allowed them to cut through our property to make a shortcut down to Dunkin' Donuts. So I did call the school. I never got, nobody ever got back to me or anything. Then I found out that they were stopped because they weren't allowed to leave school property if they're on a team. Well, somebody should have picked that up when we made the first complaint. So we don't know who we're complaining to. Like we're calling, we're getting a secretary or something. They don't think it's important,
Yeah.
So it's things like that.
Councilor Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. President. So, and thank you so much for coming, Ms. Kelly. I was taking some notes, and I think the remote for the lights needs to go to the abutters to take care of when they need to be turned off. Come on.
Terry, was that a joke?
Apparently not.
I'm just kidding. That was good. I thought you were serious at first.
Kind of serious. So I think that the park, I hate to limit the use because I think that, a lot of teams, the only time they have to practice is in the morning, but you can sweat quietly. You don't need to have music and sweat, and I think if it's violated, there should be consequences to that team or Salve, and I think that it should be signed. I mean, most parks have signs. This park is available from dawn till dusk, keep it clean. If there's any problems, call this, number and have a point of contact on the sign, so that it's very clear, that, please keep it down, before 8 o'clock in the morning, whatever it happens to be. And I think that some sort of buffer, arborvitaes are often used in the planning department to make these beautiful green walls, just to make sure that the lights are buffered, the noise is buffered, the people are buffered from trespassing. I just think that these things should be worked out ahead of time so that there's everybody's getting along and it's going to be a good project for everybody.
I think there is a 6-foot berm that we approved, plus the arborvitae's on top of that berm.
Yeah, it's high.
It doesn't go all the way, though, and the other thing is, the fields have been raised, so these lights are gonna be higher because, it's up above us. I mean,
But
I
they
think
are
they're the
different
same-
lights, though. They are different lights.
They're different lights than what's over
But
at the...
I think it brings them up to the regular height, doesn't it? I'm not sure.
So as far as the buffer goes, the buffer's being installed. There's a berm that's going in, the berm's 4 feet high.
4
We have
feet.
6 to 8 foot high arborvitae, a giant western arborvitae,
How tall do they grow, Warren?
50 feet.
50 feet
I
high?
believe it's 50 feet. They keep growing. These are large, these will turn into trees.
Yeah.
So right out of, when we're done with the construction over there, they'll have a 12-foot high buffer. 4-foot berm, 8-foot.
To start.
To start. And I've also worked with Judy Sean Johnson, the abutter, and Karen Weber is coming in to see me tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. And we've talked about leaving the vines and the briars and all of the scrub
idea.
that's growing along that chain link fence,
Good idea.
leaving it in place for now, and they've agreed that they, with permission from the council and from Sean, we would leave that there for a year and give that period of time. If they weren't satisfied with that, we take it down, make the repairs to the chain link fence that's called for in the bid, and go from there. But if they decide to leave the scrub there, then, and I call it scrub, but it's a, you're not gonna have any baseball players walking through that, it's too thick. So yeah, there's definitely a buffer that's going right along the total length of both fields, and then there's a little piece that we talked about, add another 15 feet or so on one end, just to close it out across the entire
Okay,
property.
because Mrs. Kelly just said it doesn't go all the way down.
I think that's
15
the berm that we talked about today, the other,
Yes.
the loop that you were talking about putting in.
Yep.
So,
So
once you-
we're gonna close it out right up to where the new backstop, where the backstop's gonna be moved to. We're gonna close it right out to the backside of that line that runs through there. Yeah.
Okay.
So the piece she's talking about will have a berm and it will fulfill what they're looking for.
That's right, yes. That's what we talked about at our meeting last week.
Okay,
Judy, Sean, and myself.
great.
Sean Johnson, that is.
Council Von Villas.
Yeah, what strikes me as I was listening to Mrs. Kelly is that there are a lot of issues that we're talking about in regard to this, but I come at it from an administrative and management perspective, and I want to know who's in charge of the whole thing. In other words, who's responsible? I mean, as she's talking, I'm saying, well, maybe it's the Salve people that are responsible for letting their kids do something, or maybe it's the school department that's responsible for turning the lights on or off. Somebody ought to have the responsibility of oversight and be managing this so that if somebody like Mrs. Kelly calls, she's able to get some kind of an answer and some kind of a response from an individual. And it struck me, and I don't want to jump ahead into something else, but I was looking at the consolidation report, suggested report, and it talked about the fact that the responsibility is dispersed across numbers of people. And that if we're going to be talking about commonality, then some single entity or department or even individual has to be responsible for the whole thing, and that means people answering to that person.
I agree.
You would think it would be in the
There has to be
permitting
some
process.
accountability over there.
Accountability,
Has
that's
to be some
exactly right.
accountability. And I'm gonna tell you, Mr. Brown, maybe you ought to have that conversation with the superintendent.
Correct. So right now, I would see that individual is the facilities director at the school department, David Fonz. We had an issue at the Gaudet School gym yesterday, and again, that's the first place we call. So this will be a little bit tricky, not trickier, but we'll have to address that. We'll have sort of a town facility, school facility next door to each other. But the other discussion we'll be having in April is whether or not we're consolidating departments, and then that responsibility could further change. So I think there will be a space to talk about that, and these are sort of the examples that I think will help make those decisions, rather than having the finger crossing back and
But somebody needs to
forth.
address some of these now.
Yes, no,
not
I will,
wait to the end of April.
no, I
mean,
will
the
address
lights
it,
over
and,
there, no need to have lights on.
Nope.
No need to have lights on all night long or to 11 o'clock at night if there's nobody there.
The other
There has to
thing-
be some accountability and control.
The other thing is, like, when she was talking about the Salve people, I can honestly see how things like this happen. The Salve coach or somebody who deals with those people just says, go ahead, do that. Never asked anybody, never set up, can we do this or anything like that. It's just people coming from,
Right.
and trying to do things good for kids. I mean, it's not with bad intentions, but the fact is that it has an impact. Somebody's got to have the overall, you use the word accountability.
But when somebody makes an inquiry, like obviously Mrs. Kelly has on a number of occasions, there ought to be somebody getting back to them and telling them what happened and what's going to happen. Again, this is a discussion I think you need to have with the superintendent.
nope, I will take care of it.
Council Flynn.
Just one last question. Who is the point of contact for Mrs. Kelly and the abutters right now?
Warren Hall's been having the direct conversation with her.
So is he the one that they can call from, at least for right now, through this, while the project's going on? So if there's a light still on at Gaudet, or if there's loud music at an inappropriate time, who do they call?
No. So,
That's what I'm asking. Who do they
so for
call?
for the complaint, Mrs. Kelly should call me, and I'll be in touch with her. For the project, she should be in touch with Warren, and Warren's in touch with all of the neighbors impacted by the project, not just those on Wyatt Road, but elsewhere in the vicinity.
Well, not only that, he doesn't have responsibility for the school department. He can't make the people at the school department do anything. Really has to go through the town administrator.
Right.
I just wanted Mrs. Kelly to walk away with that information.
No,
Who do I
understood.
call and when?
Yep.
Call Mr. Brown.
Yep.
And if you don't call me, and I'll call Mr. Brown.
And you've
Okay.
had it.
Item number 15, resolution of the council, change order, Middletown 020-003, athletic,
President, can we finish receiving the memo?
we did.
No, we didn't.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Wendy's back. 15, resolution of the council, change order, Middletown 020-003, athletic fields at former drive-in.
Motion to pass said resolution.
Second?
Have motion second to pass. Any further conversation? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Item number 16, memorandum of the town administrator with enclosures, RE, proposed seasonal floats at Third Beach.
Motion to receive said memorandum.
Second?
Motion second to receive. All in favor?
Aye.
Mr. President, I'm requesting the council schedule a public hearing within one of our regular meetings for the purpose of reviewing the boat ramp project and receiving public input before we submit the application for construction to CRMC.
I think it'd be a great idea. And we have a resident that would like to speak in regards to that tonight. Mrs. Cummings, come on up.
First off, you have to excuse me, but the volume is affecting my hearing. I'll do
It's
the
too
best.
loud in here?
Pardon?
It's too loud in here?
No, it's the volume and my hearing aids just
Oh, okay.
don't work together, so you have to bear with me. We have been down
Name and
this
address,
road.
please.
Pardon?
Name and address, please.
Carol Cummings,
Address?
738 Indian
Thank you.
Avenue,
Mrs.
Middletown,
Cummings.
Rhode Island.
Now, out of 147
Ready to go.
times you've been there. Thank you.
I just became aware of this situation recently and made a few phone calls to people that go to Third Beach. They're elderly, like myself, and they also have people that have young children. They love it just the way that it is. We have been down this road before years ago, and it was completely washed out. We had over 150 people in here against what is being proposed right now. This is a very, very
Could you
dangerous.
talk into the mic, Mrs. Cummings, so everybody can hear you? Could you talk into the mic, please?
The microphone.
Speak into the mic.
Carol.
Speaking of the mic,
There you go, yeah, so they can
Okay,
hear you in
all
the
right.
back. They can't hear you.
how about if I bring it down here like that?
That's
How's
good.
that?
Thank
Okay.
you.
As I said before, we've been down this road before. And we did it at a most propitious time. It wasn't in the middle of winter. It was when people were just before going to the beach. Kids were out of school. People were able to concentrate on what was being said. They weren't in Florida. They weren't taking their kids on vacation as they are this week. As I had mentioned, I've talked to a number of people regarding this. They're absolutely, totally blown away to think the town would attempt to do this. It's a very dangerous thing that is being proposed, and it should be stopped now, without a doubt. It's a very costly thing. It's a costly thing for people that have children, and I could go on and on and on and bore you out of your minds. But there's a statement from Compromise and Things I've Done. Keep me with a stern and stubborn pride. And that's the way we all feel.
We're
Thanks to
gonna
Louis
set
Monaghan.
up a public hearing for this, okay?
What?
We're gonna set up a public hearing to allow the public to come in and weigh into this again. This is
So
probably the third
I
time the
won't keep
public's
going,
weighed
because
in.
as you know, what you're saying, I'm really not
If you call Council Santos tomorrow, she'll fill you in.
We're going to have a public hearing, Carol.
Yeah, I know you are, but
Okay.
I'm just simply saying this so that you know, in case some of you don't know, that we have been down this road before.
We've been there with you.
And people are very adamant, even if we get all this stuff for nothing, it's not. It's going to cost a lot of money to maintain it.
So I just want to make sure,
Go ahead.
So Carol, this is, I understand the one years back was a permanent dock that they were talking about.
It
Th-
doesn't make any difference.
I
if it's
just
permanent
want to
or
make
it's
sure,
not
I didn't know if
permanent.
you were aware of,
Doesn't make any difference, Paul. It should remain as it stands
I
right
just,
now.
I just wanted to make sure you understood this was a floating dock that would be installed in May and taken out in September.
It doesn't make any difference.
Okay,
If
I just wanted to make sure
You
you
get a storm in
knew
the
that.
middle of the summer, you gotta get it out of there. It's dangerous for young people. Little kids get up on it, they dive, they get caught in it.
Yeah, I just look at it as a safety issue for
You
our
can
harbor
talk
master and
all you
stuff like
want,
that,
Paul,
so that's
but
fine.
I'll tell you,
That's fine.
it should not happen.
But we're going to have another
It's-
public hearing.
It won't be
We've
the,
had them
fir-
before.
it won't
I
be the
know,
first time we
will.
differed in
There'll be more
opinion.
people here.
And we'll get more people here, and we'll
I mean,
weigh
I'm
it.
just, I'm just throwing in the wash, that's it.
Thank
See
you,
later.
Mrs. Cummings.
Thank you.
Mr. President?
Council Flynn.
Thank you. I just had two questions. I noticed that the keywords of the issue have changed from floating dock to seasonal floats. I was just wondering why that, if there was a reason for that? No reason?
No reason.
Okay, so, we're in a search engine world here, so I think it's important to be consistent, in order to be transparent. And so, Madam Clerk, if you could just make sure that the words floating dock get in the minutes, and for future agendas, if you can use both terms if you want to, seasonal floats and floating dock, but it's not going to come up in a search if, with the word change.
I would just want to make sure that whatever is on the agendas is what we're actually applying for with CRMC. So if
Right.
there's a specific term of art that the town have latitude to.
Well, it's, to date, it has been floating dock on April 1st, April 27th, November 18th, and January 6th.
Okay.
It's a floating pier.
That's what I was saying would be.
You want to make a comment, Mr. Hall?
It just has to be consistent, I feel.
Well, it should be consistent with what ultimately we'd be applying for with the state.
Right.
So that's,
Floating pier. I believe we should call it floating pier, Mr. President, members of the council.
There was a comment at the last budget round when we had our Saturday that we were told we couldn't use pier
No.
as a term?
No, I think, well, the question is, I think what the solicitor wants is that if we're going to choose tonight a way of referring to this as a single reference, that we use what CRMC would call it, which is a floating pier. So all the other, if that's what we're going, that is the official title of what this is from CRMC's standpoint.
So as of tonight's officially known as the
Floating pier.
floating pier.
Yes.
Okay.
So because it's the same issue and it has been referred to as floating dock,
We're going to
now-
call it a floating pier.
I just want to make sure that
Is
we're.
there any issue with that from a
No.
carryover standpoint?
No, we ought to be consistent with what we're applying for. And if what we called it before wasn't specific enough, we want to be specific enough going
So
forward.
could the minutes please reflect that the floating dock is now going to be referred to as the floating pier? Please.
I'm sure it's listening to this job.
And I had one other question.
Go right ahead.
That's six. That's six questions already.
Well, they're relevant, so I guess that's okay. So I did also want to ask and point out that the year-end report from the harbor master that we received back on November 18th, the harbor master stated, and I'm going to quote, "We need the least expensive plastic Trex dock made that meets state criteria. The dock should be mobile so it can be removed by axle or a winch on a car tow truck and brought up into the parking lot." So, in anticipation of the public hearing, I'd like to, for the council to be provided, and the public, the same level of detail and the cost estimate of what the harbor master's recommendation would be as for the floating pier, so that we have equal information for both scenarios.
So, what's that? I was going to say, so the recommendations from the harbor master, Warren worked with the harbor master to put this together. This also, since the harbor master's made the recommendations, has been reviewed by CRMC, not from a permit basis, but from the basis of what would be permitted. So you're sort of at that point comparing apples and oranges. You're comparing a recommendation from someone who's not an engineer, who hasn't been at CRMC, to what actually will be permitted by the regulators. So I'm not sure.
Well,
I think everyone's working on the same project, and then it seems like this effort would be to differentiate the project. I don't understand.
Well, the way I was reading it and the way I read the comprehensive plan, I was thinking or interpreting the harbor master's report as a more benign element to achieve the safety goal. So I was curious of what that looked like to the same level of detail as what we were being presented. You know, 100 foot and a $100,000 dock. I think, Paul, it was you at the last budget meeting who said that originally it had come up at like a $30,000 or $40,000.
Yeah, originally
element.
when we looked at this a few years ago as part of the, improvements to the beaches,
Yes.
it wasn't, when I saw the picture, wasn't what we had talked about.
So I was just wondering, if there are options that would be more in line with, maybe the comprehensive plan's goals and our budget goals.
Well, I think what Sean's, the way I'm understanding, I think what you're saying is that it's not what we want, it's what they'll allow. If you want to do this, this is what you'll have to do to be able to get this permit.
So we sat with Steve. So Steve has met with Warren numerous times. And the concept that Steve, the harbor master, and the council subcommittee on the pier, Steve had an original concept, but when you look at the elevation or the depth of the draft, I don't know what the right word is, Warren, depth of water?
Depth of water.
Depth of water, and what CRMC will approve, this is actually what it looks like. So this is after the engineer looks at it with the topography of the ground, after the scientists at CRMC say this is what you're going to, what does the eelgrass bed look like and all the different pieces. This is the minimum impact, again, based on the concept brought to the town by the harbor master. I think it's sort of, it's that here's the art of it, and now we get to the science of the engineering and design of it. So again, this is the minimum. And from my standpoint, I'm trying to spend as little money as possible, but, to try to contain it in the budget. Warren is trying to adhere to what the harbor master had recommended to the committee. I don't want to get far away from what the committee had a lot of hearings. They listened to a lot of people. I think you had a meeting just about this one issue itself. So we're staying as true to what was required of us as possible.
So the pier, the floating portion of the pier, the majority of it is floating, is what they call an easy dock system, and it's sections that are purchased. You can get different widths and different lengths, and they're basically floats that are bolted together, and they turn and they swivel, and they allow for the tide to come in and waves to roll by them. But this is the system that's the harbor master, Steve Ponch, suggested. I did the research. We submitted a preliminary determination to CRMC. They looked at it. They agreed with it. They thought it was a good seasonal type setup where it wasn't going to be permanently through the year, through the winters. So we have a favorable recommendation from them to move forward with a formal application. Like Sean said, the length and the cost is driven by how far we have to go out to get to the depth of water that the harbor master is requiring, what his boat requires to float, how much it draws, the draft of his vessel. We can't go out too far because of the eelgrass, so that's basically how the length and the cost is driven by. Right now, the cost is just about $100,000.
Okay. I appreciate that explanation, thank you. I think that'll
Certainly.
come in handy in anticipation of the
Certainly.
public hearing.
And some of the other features of the Easy Dock and what we like about it is that it has a very low profile, so it's not sticking a couple feet up off the surface of the water, and it's only about 12 inches above the water that you'll be able to see. So it has a very low profile. There'll be no piles. It's anchored to the bottom with the helical anchors, rubber tethers to keep it in place during weather events. So we did take into account some of the aesthetic impacts to the area.
Council Santos.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Hall, who would be using this floating pier?
So the pier itself would be used by the harbor master
Okay.
with his boat. The pier would be used by boaters as they come up and down the ramp. They would temporarily leave their boat at the floating pier, go back to the vehicle, grab their day packages, whatever they're gonna do, bring it down the pier, load onto the boat, and go from there. It'd be used by the people who have moorings. The folks there would be able to come in and out with their tenders to load and unload for the day, for wherever their trips, things like that.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Mr. Hall.
You're welcome.
Item number 16A, memorandum of the town administrator with enclosures, RE, Department Consolidation Study.
Motion to receive said memorandum.
Second?
A motion second to receive. All we're doing is receiving it tonight, ladies and gentlemen. And we're gonna have, I spoke to Mr. Brown, and we're gonna have the author of the study be here on April 20th. At that time, we'll entertain questions from the public and from the council.
Mr.
Well,
President,
Council Santos.
will that be a special meeting or that included in
It'll be a regular meeting,
regular meeting? Thank you, sir.
April 20th.
I was gonna bring that up, but along those lines, I'm not sure, are we gonna do it before the meeting? I don't think an hour is enough to talk about this.
We'll talk about that, and we'll set the agenda, but it's gonna be on April 20th.
Okay.
Let me just check with what time Alan's availability is to be here that day, and we can and we'll make sure we put a good block in availability for him, okay?
And we
Okay.
don't have to have everything copied again. We can use what we have tonight.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, we have a motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Item number 17, boards and committees. Appointment of one member to the Open Space and Fields Committee, one vacancy, term expiring November 2022, and one vacancy to complete a term expiring November 2021.
Motion to appoint James Cawley Senior to the Open Space and Fields Committee, term expiring November 2022.
Second?
Do we have any further,
It's the only one.
okay, I know that. We have any other nominations? Okay. Motion second to appoint James Cawley, Senior. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And we can re-advertise again, Madam Clerk, for that vacancy. Okay? Maybe we don't want to do it right away. We'll see if there's any other vacancies on any other boards that are going to be coming up shortly. Okay? Number 18, executive session. Pursuant to provisions RIGL, sections 4246-2, 4246-4, and 4246-6A, lease, East Main Road, litigation, potential litigation, City of Newport, collective bargain, FOP, collective bargain, IAFF, Fire Department, review, discussion, and/or potential action, and/or vote in executive session, and/or open session.
Motion to recess, open session, and reconvene in executive session.
Second?
A motion and a second to recess, open, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Pam.